we want to go to Really Graceful to check out what's going on in Aurora. And then we have a short clip. This is an homage clip. It was made by someone in the audience. It got passed to me the other day. It's an homage to liberty-loving, freedom, independent producers. And you're going to see probably many of the freedom producers that you follow or have checked out their work in the past. You're going to see them represented in this video. Now, is this a billion-dollar DreamWorks presentation? No, this is someone who's learning how to do some video editing, and it looks like they like to play wrestling games and listen to freedom podcasts like Grand Theft World. So to whomever made this video that's in the middle of this block, thank you. It was pretty cool to see myself represented among such prestigious colleagues of mine. So thank you for that. And I'm saying thanks by sharing it with everybody else. And if you think you could do better, then do better. Don't critique people who are like trying to get their art on, because that's not cool. All right. And then the last part is someone else getting their art on. It's Seamus Coughlin from Freedom Tunes. And he does have a Kamala update about the recent policies and the other shenanigans that are going on. And the polite way to call it out in a way that you could pass around to your friends is Freedom Tunes. So we're going to check that out in this block, and then we will be back to change the subject because we have a lot of other topics to get to in tonight's show. So thank you for tuning in to Grand Theft World, and let's go to the top of the block with Really Graceful talking about Aurora, Colorado.
Hey, Internet friends. Is the open border situation finally coming to a head in the United States? We've heard the whispers, we've seen the viral videos, but now it seems those distant concerns are knocking right on our own doors, especially in Aurora, Colorado. You see, political upheaval and economic freefall in Venezuela have been spinning out of control for what seems like a decade. People are fleeing, which is not surprising, but what is surprising is what you see when cameras sweep across those throngs of folks crossing the border. Where are the old folks, the children, the women, the family men? Rather, young males, military-aged, with a certain look in their eyes that doesn't exactly scream seeking refuge, are being shown. Unfortunately, Colorado is in a big mess right now. The Tren Aragua gang from Venezuela has slithered into Aurora and set up shop. We're talking about shootouts in the streets, taking over entire apartment buildings, changing locks, collecting rent like they own the place. The gang is reportedly breaking into homes while pretending to be delivery people. An otherwise quiet American town is quickly descending into a third world hellhole thanks to left-wing progressive policies.
Aurora has been in the national spotlight as videos have been circulating on social media showing gang members taking over apartments. It's important to note the city nor the Aurora Police Department have confirmed any of those claims.
In context with our residents, reassuring them about the criminal activity that's happening here and how we're going to address it. We're out here, we want to reassure the people that live in this community that we are actively investigating criminal activity that's happening and listening to them. I'm not saying that there's not gang members that don't live in this community, but what we're learning out here is that gang members have not taken over this complex. We've really made an effort to the last few days to just really ask the specific questions and the direct questions in terms of...
Can you confirm whether or not this gang has taken over these buildings there in Aurora?
So there are several buildings actually under the same ownership, out-of-state ownership, that have fallen to these Venezuelan gangs. Somebody put them there and somebody funded it, whether it's federal government or not. We're trying to find out who. They've in fact have kind of pushed out the property management through intimidation and then collected the rents.
This has alarmed neighbors and local authorities, causing the Aurora Police Department to create a special task team. But it seems like no matter how many taxpayer dollars are funneled into the situation, the problem at hand is never resolved but always downplayed. And you're gaslit as someone who lives there. And instead of politicians and police leaders saying, yeah, you're right, we need to do something about this, the hatred and vitriol is being directed at local citizens who demand for law and order to be restored to their town. Reported yesterday by Aurora Police, they're denying that TDA has taken over entire apartment complexes and say the situation is under control.
All right, so after attending this press conference here on Colfax, I can see that according to our city and our leaders here in Denver, the problem is not the Venezuelan street gang Tren de Aragua. The problem is those of us who are talking about it. We are the ones creating problems.
Over a month ago, Homeland Security issued a warning specifically to the cities of Denver, Colorado, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Chicago, Illinois, and New York City that the TDA gang's leaders had given their gang members the go-ahead to kill local police. This was confirmed by a 19-year-old Venezuelan illegal alien who was arraigned on charges including 2 counts of attempted murder for shooting 2 NYPD officers during a traffic stop in Queens. He claimed affiliation with the Venezuelan gang TDA and revealed that the gang smuggles guns into migrant shelters in NYC, and that this is a common practice across every sanctuary city in the U.S. And it's almost like, I'm going to sound crazy here, hold on to your butts, almost like these shelters are not for refuge. All of our best young men are now mobilized to the other side of the world in America's forever wars, and Democrats are contracting various gangs to go and create chaos amongst American cities. So right on cue, the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution plays out right before us. People with good intentions are calling on the military and National Guard to intervene. There was even a rumor flying around the internet yesterday that the biker gang Hells Angels were headed to Aurora to take on the Venezuelan gangs. That's a feel-good story right there. Everyone loves a little vigilante justice, myself included. But unfortunately, it appears that all of the footage being circulated online of the Hells Angels traveling across country are older videos. And surely if the Hells Angels were headed to do this, they wouldn't be posting about it on Twitter ahead of time. At least I would hope not. But rest assured, if any vigilante justice actually took place, the government of Colorado and the police of Colorado would be deployed against the Hells Angels instead of the TDA.
We need to address the issue of immigration and the challenge we have of undocumented people in our country. We certainly don't want any more coming in.
The California lawmakers just passed a law. It hasn't been signed by Governor Newsom, but giving government assistance to undocumented immigrants to buy houses. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a different place than the Democratic Party used to be on immigration, is it not? I'm not going to say that's what the country's going to do, but that's certainly where California is.
Well, let me just say, immigration had always been a bipartisan issue. I refer you to
But not free houses.
Well, that's not free housing. It's the American dream being available to more people.
Colorado today, did you see that? Where Venezuelan gang members have taken over parts of the city. They've taken over apartment houses because these stupid people that we have leading our country are allowing these people, these criminals, to come into our country, and we're going to get them the hell out of here. And this is just the beginning. Wait till you see what happens. Wait till you see what they're doing.
We put so much focus on this gang or this group, but we really should be redirecting our attention to the puppeteers of all this chaos. The people who drew out plans hundreds of years ago, the politicians who opened the doors wide, the systems that let these folks slip through the cracks. Why does the U.S. taxpayer have to pay for these people to live here? And I can't help but wonder when it comes to the open borders debate. Maybe it's not just the borders that are open, but a Pandora's box we've been too afraid to close. This is the rot and decay of a declining empire, one that is being attacked from all fronts, especially within. And most folks are just completely complacent, ignorant to all that is going on, until it happens to them. In their town, in their community, in their neighborhood, when they're paying their rent to some muchacho or whoever really. We've got Middle Eastern terrorists, cannibal Haitian gang leaders, and Chinese nationals coming in through the border. By the way, who wrote that check and who flew them out and dropped them off at the border so they could cross it? Anyway, when these folks suddenly decide to make a fuss about it, it'll be too late. What do you think, internet friends? You know I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, liking the video, and for picking up a copy of the Deep State Encyclopedia.
It's still real to me, damn it! you see, it don't mean not too bad. When I'm said and done, I stand on my 2 feet. Yeah, let me be, I live by my rules. Independent, can't you see, it's my right to choose. Independent. They try to teach me all their rules. I have my own idea, did it in their schools. Don't they see that we all have a brain? There to learn, not to be with the day. Let me be, I live by my rules. Independence, can't you see? It's my right to choose. Independence.
tell you guys about I have a plan. An incredible plan to lower inflation. If you elect me, inflation is gone.
Wow.
That's incredible.
It's true, I am.
Why can't you just do it now?
Next topic, the border.
If you elect me, I've got a plan to stop all the border crossings.
Amazing!
What a leader!
Visionary!
Why can't you start on that now?
Next question. What do you plan to do about the war in Ukraine?
I'm gonna fix the war. The war is gonna be fixed.
Truly amazing.
You can do that?
Sent from the heavens she is.
You had 4 years to do that. Why can't you do that now? Why haven't you done that? You won't do anything because you don't care about the American people.
No, we cannot do everything all at once. Patience is needed.
What if we tax people selling their homes at 44%?
The time for action is now!
Become a member at freedomtunes.com for exclusive cartoons.
All right, because they are raising the taxes, and that's a good way to get people to know how they're raising the taxes. Right there. Thank you, Seamus, for putting that together. And Freedom Tunes is shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, it's pretty easy to make fun of Joe Biden. Many people have made fun of Joe Biden, but a few people have had the rapier wit brought about in the Kamala direction. And I think Seamus is intrepid and courageous for even attempting to make fun of someone who checks off all the boxes of diversity, equity, and inclusion these days, and stands his ground on those beliefs. Because I think more people need to learn to stand their ground, because you see what's going on in Colorado. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I also want to remind you about this weekend's special VIP event. This is the very independent producer event. This is where colleagues of mine come together to share their wisdom of how they got started and how they keep going against the New World Order agendas as they all work in their individual ways to fight these agendas of globalism and collectivism and communism. So we're going to have a rip-roaring time. As you see, there are many people that are going to be at the VIP for event, each one bringing you a special slice of information that when you put it together, brings out a mosaic of freedom that can be enjoyed, not just in this generation, but in generations to come. You can reserve a seat by clicking the banner over at grandtheftworld.com. See, this is the banner, and you click these little arrows, and you go, oh, there it is. And you could click that, and it opens up, and you don't even need to know the URL. But if you did want to know that URL, it's the universityofreason.com/autonomy-vip-summit-4. If you like to type that stuff out, there it is. If not, you just go to grandtheftworld.com, where you can be sharing clips of the show and other fun stuff with your friends to try to help educate them in this very dire time of need in our country. There's a lot of people being gaslit by those media channels out there, and the ones who don't even think for themselves, that don't ask, is what I'm hearing true? Can I validate this with evidence in actual reality that this thing's going on? And if they don't ask those questions, they probably ask things like, what are people going to think if I think the other way, right? They're afraid to color outside the lines, when sometimes the whole point in life is to color outside those lines. Now, in this case, coloring outside the lines just means cognitive liberty, the ability and the freedom to think outside of their official narrative, to question their narrative, to be incredulous of their narratives, to seek verification, validation, substantiation of the claims being made by the people on those very powerful multi-billion-dollar propaganda networks that are owned by they, them, those in the deep state, the invisible government, that seek to persuade you into believing things that are not true. That's basically how they steal your power in most areas of life. It's through assumptions and through their edited occlusions of history, where you think you know what's going on, but you don't take into account and weigh those billions of documents that are held under national security, which actually tell a more supra narrative than what the official story to the public might be at any given time. Now, at this point, we're going to change up topics, because you have heard a little bit about the migration of people from other countries into this country who might not be the well-meaning Ellis Island-esque immigrants of old. These are people coming from despotic areas looking for freedom. No, these are people that might come from despotic areas looking to spread despotic areas around the world in our country and have tyranny, because they come from a much more harsh place, and they could take advantage of people here who have earned comfort in their lifestyle and aren't necessarily looking around to see what's going on. They're busy living their lives. Well, while people have been living their lives, those democratic sanctuary cities have not only been holding the migrants, they've been arming, maybe even training the migrants that might make up some sort of international army that is under cloak of cover of innocent migrants who are coming here for a better life. They might just sneak in along with them. And if you're coming from a prison in a foreign country that's very harsh, then you're probably going to act like that here, but you're not going to have so much pushback. And that's what I think probably happened in Colorado. Those people got their buildings taken over, their apartments taken over, their properties, their businesses, and they didn't have an effective way to communicate, coordinate, and push back. And I think that's probably a lesson in American history that needs to be revisited, because we did know how to do such things once upon a time. There was some pushback in our culture, the ability to stand our ground, the ability to articulate our views clearly and win with reasoned arguments and not the force of muskets and cannons. But when people who are irrational come in and they start using violence and plunder and theft, then you have to learn how to speak that language if you're going to communicate with them. Instead of hoping and wishing that they would come up and speak your logical, reasonable language, you have what's called the language of the jungle, the law of the jungle. And that's nature. Nature's metal. And people need to probably toughen up a little bit mentally, be a little bit more anti-fragile, be a little bit more growth mindset to meet these new challenges and be able to survive and thrive in a world that really doesn't want you to survive or thrive whatsoever unless they're taxing you 6 ways from Sunday. So with that in mind, we're going to go listen to a couple leftist, progressivist, collectivist type of people discuss our Second Amendment and firearms. It's going to be hilarious for anyone who knows what they're doing. This is going to be priceless. You're going to see a world famous Oscar award-winning director, Quentin Tarantino. Almost every movie he's ever had has egregious, graphic gun violence in it. And you're going to see another guy called Bill Maher, and they're going to opine on the Alec Baldwin shooting case. And what's going to become painfully clear is neither one of them knows a gosh darn thing about firearms. And that's probably why they hold that position. Because to them, people with guns are scary because they are not people with guns to protect themselves. Yeah, that is scary. But instead of saying they would learn how to protect themselves, they say, I want everyone else who's a legal, lawful person to be unarmed, and only for the predators and the violent criminals who are always going to break the law to have the guns. So if we don't have the right to defend ourselves, are we property? Because I'm pretty sure only slaves in history weren't allowed to defend themselves. But we're going to get into these ideas, and we do have some good news coming from a federal judge ruling. But first, I got to lay out these first two stories. So the first one's Bill Maher and Tarantino, and the second one is The Daily Show, TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome for short. The Daily Show has taken aim at guns, and I listened carefully to Jon Stewart's partially reasoned argument, and I can see his points, but there's a lot of points from the other side, the people who support Second Amendment, that Daily Show writers, producers, audience really can't see. And I think that that educational gap could be closed with reasoned speaking and these sort of things. But when Second Amendment people hear people like Jon Stewart talking about taking away their right to protect their family and their property, they can't hear that reason anymore, because it comes down to those are fighting words. So we have to prevent the fighting. We have to prevent the civil war. We have to do that with reasoned discourse and the ability for both sides to say, you know what, I might be wrong, so go ahead and tell me what your perspective is, and maybe I'll learn something out of this, and then we can do vice versa. And from that building process, I think we can come to have a more coherent understanding of each other's position. And though we might not agree, we will at least agree on what facts are and what facts are not in relation to this story that always has at least two sides. So without further ado, let's jump into this block. Let's go first to Bill Maher, then we'll get to The Daily Show, and then we'll get to Tim Pool with the federal judge ruling in a way that would probably make Daily Show, Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, and Tarantino quake in their loafers. Let's check it out.
Like, either you think he purposely shot that cinematographer, or you think he didn't purposely shoot her. And if he didn't purposely shoot her, then it's all bullshit. Am I wrong?
No, it's a situation. I think I'm being fair enough to say that the armorer is 90, the guy who handles the gun, then armorer is 90% responsible for everything that happens when it comes to that gun. But the actor is 10% responsible. The actor is 10% responsible. It's not just, it's a gun. You are a partner in the responsibility to some degree.
Well, so what do you do to test it?
They show it to you. If there's steps to go through, you go through them, and you do it. And it's done with due diligence, and you know it's fucking for real. All right. And so, like, okay, here's how an actor can handle it. I'm not talking about that situation.
What should he have done? Looked into the barrel, or like shot it one. I mean, you can't like shoot it because then you're using it.
If he went through the steps that he's supposed to go through, then he's
What are the steps?
Well, it's like, okay, so you see the barrel is clear. They show you that the barrel is clear, that there's not anything wedged in between the barrel. You actually show you the barrel. All right, you look at they show it you the barrel, and then they show you some version of like, here are our blanks. These are the blanks, and then here's the gun. Boom. Now you're ready to go. It's ready for 2, or it's ready for 3. And if an actor if the actor knows he has 3 hot rounds in his gun, and he knows that, like, okay, I'm going to do a scene, blah, 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 blah. And he knows he's got 3 hot rounds as he's doing the scene. And then at this point, bam, bam, bam. And then he's going to continue on and say a few more things. Okay, if one of the rounds doesn't go off while he does his bam, 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 then he should, like, cut the scene and say, guys, one of the rounds didn't go off. I think I'm still holding a hot gun here.
Okay, let me ask you this. Why can't we just do it this way? There's nothing in the gun. Nothing. So when the actor pulls the trigger, nothing happens except you hear...
Except that's bloodless.
Okay, but can't you put that in post?
Yeah, but okay, yeah, I guess I can add digital erections to porno movies, but who wants to fucking watch that?
I don't think we needed to go that far.
No, it's like, yeah.
But I'm just,
it is.
I don't understand
it's exciting to shoot the blanks and to see the real orange fire, not add orange fire.
So we do see orange fire.
Yeah, but when you got to catch it.
Well,
it's like a thing that you got to catch it, because the thing about no, let me explain it.
I'm just saying, I'm not going to argue catching orange fire with Quentin Tarantino. I get it. You're the orange fire.
But there's an interesting thing about it, though, because when you actually fire a gun, whether or not you see the orange fire that comes out of the muzzle, it's a 50-50 thing. Okay, if you see it on the viewfinder, you didn't catch it on the camera. If you don't see it in the viewfinder, that means you got it on the camera. So it is actually something you have to catch. It's not just
all right. What about this? Would it be always impossible to shoot from an angle where the person wasn't aiming at anyone? So if the worst happened, you would just be shooting the wall.
Well, okay. Can I answer that?
I'm saying, why can't the camera be here?
Can I answer that from an action movie point of view, from an action movie lover point of view?
Please do. I want to know.
Even before I was a filmmaker, when I was like the guy at Video Archives, I can answer that exactly. That's what Hollywood did in the 80s. And then I started watching Hong Kong movies. And then like Chow Yun Fat has got the 45 and he's this close to the guy. Bam, 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 bam. And it was so exciting. It was like movies were liberated. It was like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And if you're talking about... And I think for as many guns as we've shot off in movies, that we only have 2 examples of people being shot on the set by a gun mishap. That's a pretty fucking good record.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I just wouldn't want, especially now, to ever be on the wrong end of a gun. No matter how much I thought it was safe, I would be shitting in my pants.
No. Look. That's the kind of fuck up that happens that undermines an entire industry.
Yeah, kind of. Well, it certainly makes you nervous.
But you don't need nervous people. You want people to go for it. That's the last thing you want is nervous people. You want, no, we're all in this together and we're going to do this cool thing and we're going to capture this exciting thing on film. And it's a thing that we're capturing.
But it's the thing, to go back to Alec Baldwin just for 1 second. I mean, and look, I have no personal really relationship. He used to do my show a lot, and we loved him. He'd stopped doing it, which I have no grudge about. I wish he would, because he's such an interesting guy to talk to. But
was there a reason that you know for a fact?
No, he's got living his best life.
Okay.
He's got 1,000 children. You know, I'm happy he's a free man, or at least as free as a man with 8 children can be. And I'm happy it came out well for him. But no, I like him a lot. He's interesting. I mean, has he colored beyond the lines? Many times. And he always survives. I kind of love that about him. And he's too charismatic. People are like, yeah, he's Alec Baldwin. And I agree with that. He's
kind of the whole package as a celebrity. When you when you add up the last 30 years.
Yes. And very funny. And, you know, anyway, I forgot what I was going to say about him. Well, just generally, I'm glad that, when I saw him crying at the, he
ended up shooting somebody. That's not something most of us human beings have to go through.
And it's bad enough. But then to have to put him through this charade.
No, it's terrible.
I mean, like, when I saw him break down, it's like, yes. I mean, you saw, like, this incredible amount of stress and tension, which any of us would have had under the same circumstances. Like, it's the kind of thing that just makes you really go yuck about the nature of our society these days. The pettiness that some people have, the sort of the bad faith. When you know what that means? I'm sure
I know exactly what it means.
Act in bad faith. When you don't really think he's guilty of it, but you know you can get away with charging that. That's called bad faith.
No, I mean,
it's so gross.
No, I actually think it's
gross.
Actually.
And that's why I drink.
I don't want to.
God damn it!
I don't want to, get into a thing where I'm just like cynical about the modern the modern world of the modern times.
Get into it. It's like finger painting.
Yeah, but the thing that does make me heartsick, at the end of the day, all comes down to the bad faith on every single solitary side.
Everything. So true. Hey.
In the wake of some events that have happened, Newtown, Aurora, Portland, Tucson, it's a 22-minute show, so I'm not going to list everything. But finally, everyone from the NRA to the Marin County Kumbaya Patrol is ready to talk about gun violence. Although, to be fair, the Kumbaya Patrol's been ready for quite some time now. So let's have that conversation, people. Nothing's off the table. No bad ideas. A safe space. Let's start the discussion on gun violence. Let's start it with the discussion of gun control.
Gun control, it's not going to make any kids safer. We got to get to the real problem, the real causes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed that beginning a conversation about gun control meant starting with guns. But you want to talk about the non-gun causes of gun violence. Well, you know what? It's a conversation. No bad ideas. Maybe there are other factors we should look at. What other non-gun causes are we talking about here?
We have so much violence surrounding us that we think is okay.
Violent video games with names like Bulletstorm, Grand Theft Auto, Mortal Kombat, Splatterhouse. Blood-soaked films out there. American Psycho, Natural Born Killers.
Natural Born Killers and American Psycho. Holy. Has it been that long since we've had a conversation about gun control? Been that long since we deflected the gun control argument with the corrupt Hollywood media culture argument? But you know what? That French guy has a point. It may be an indirect influence, but there is no question that we glorify violence in our culture, and it's something we have to consider. If a massacre occurs in a schoolhouse and TV network heads have to scramble to see if that storyline's going to bump up against the network's primetime episodic schedule, that's a problem. Oh, is this terrible massacre going to affect our new show, Massacre, Fridays at 8. The hot new lead-in to Corpse Raper Intent, SVU, starring, I don't know who that, Nick Carter and a young Gallagher. Look, man, as for violent video games, yeah, I guess they're out there. But then again, the Dutch spend more than twice as much on video games as we do and have less than a tenth of the gun violence. Although, to be fair, most of their games are of the first-person dike plugger genre. So yeah, maybe we need to talk about whether our culture is adding to the soup. That's got to be on the table. But if we're going to talk about that, let's look at all of our culture. The right likes to talk about Hollywood's influence on that, but are there other media influences that must also be examined?
Are there terrorist cells in your neighborhood?
The new Black Panther parties outside a polling place.
These Sharia mosques have become the command centers for terrorism. The end of capitalism in America.
We're 4 years into tyranny winning.
This is indoctrination of kids.
If you live in the East, may I recommend get the hell out of the East.
It's going to be Armageddon.
Your religion is going to come under attack.
If Obama's reelected, this country's over.
I'm not sure what happened. I'm sorry. I blacked out in the middle of that and woke up with an AK in my hand. I don't know. Or whatever this is. I'm sure I'll get letters about what this really is. Which is plastic, is what it really is. But it brings us back to the more direct issue of guns.
Gun control doesn't work.
Or not. I keep forgetting. What else?
We have a mental health system in this country that is completely and totally collapsed.
Okay. Again, 100% correct. Thank you, Wayne LaPierre, for bringing this up. We closed the mental institutions in many respects, and now our mentally ill live on the streets or are in prison, and it is untenable, and it's up to us to help them find compassionate, proactive care. This is what we have to address in our mental health system. I'm assuming that's what you mean.
We have no national database of these lunatics.
Or that. I was going to say compassionate, total care of mental illness or lunatic database. Although, isn't that what the internet is? Isn't that a national lunatic database? What would be the criterion for the lunatic database? What are the kinds of things you would say to get on it?
Americans don't want to be added to that pile of dead people that have been left defenseless by the UN policies.
LaPierre with 2 R's or 1. Look, I don't want to kill a conversation before it starts. Yes, mental health care absolutely has to be on the table, has to be improved. But someone's always going to slip through the cracks, and our mental health problem leads to other problems. Crime, guns, violence.
Ultimately, we don't have a crime problem or a gun problem or even a violence problem. What we have is a sin problem.
Is this about me masturbating? Is that what this is about? Look, I didn't know that was considered a national issue. Look, we can dance around the issue all we want. We can blame movies or video games or the mentally ill or God. And we do have to it's a complex problem and all solutions have to be on the table. But it is time we talk about guns.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this gun control discussion right now. There's a day, place, and a time for all that.
It's today, right now. We'll move to something slightly more mainstream. Universal background checks.
Obviously, we have some background checks. It's how encompassing you do it. Do you do it for one father selling to a son or another relative? How do you cover everything? I think that's the issue. And also the extent to which you have private sales on Sunday between relatives.
I'm not going to pass judgment on a culture which is clearly somewhat foreign to me, but is that really how it works? Sunday is family gun swap day? Is that how it goes? Because I gotta get out more. Anyone else have a reason.
When it comes to background checks, let's be honest. Background checks will never be universal because criminals will never submit to them.
Good point. Let's pass laws that only criminals will immediately obey. Let's do that. Hey, what's this thou shalt not kill? You know, murderers are just going to bypass that. They'll find a way around it. I mean, I just don't know who to trust here. I mean, I know the main lobbyist for gun manufacturers has a unique insight and expertise into whether background checks really work. But just for schnicks, let's ask someone else. You, guy dressed up like he's fresh off the set of The Wire. What do you think?
Background checks work.
Says you. Baltimore County Police Chief. Back it up.
They stopped nearly 2 million prohibited purchasers between 1994 and 2009. Extending a background check to all firearms purchases can easily be implemented, and it should be, without delay.
Well, you say that, and they say it doesn't work at all, so let's teach the controversy. So humor me. Let's say for a minute, background checks will work. Any other reason not to do it?
I just don't think law-abiding people want every gun sale in the country to be on the thumb of the federal government.
Except that literally almost all of them do. Including 93% of Americans and 85% of people living in a household with a member of the NRA. In fact, I know a gentleman who makes a pretty wonderful case for universal background checks.
Let's talk about what's reasonable and what's not. We think it's reasonable to provide mandatory instant criminal background checks for every sale at every gun show. No loopholes anywhere for anyone.
Wow. Background checks used to be supported by 100% of Wayne's LaPierre. By the way, that might have been the last time Wayne LaPierre said, "We think it's reasonable," and followed it up with something actually reasonable. It turns out the only amendment we've been able to constrict in the post-Newtown world is the first.
I find it so incredibly ironic that its proponents think these weapons are a problem in the hands of law-abiding citizens, but apparently see no problem with the same weapons being glorified in Hollywood movies and video games, where the game is interactive, violent, and you are literally shooting at people.
One, in video games, you are not literally shooting at people. What you're shooting at is a series of zeros and ones that are organized into a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional. I guess I'm not considering the real-world consequences of checking to see if someone buying a gun on the internet is a convicted felon who moderates a Charlie Manson message board. Hey, guys, come on, let's not get off topic. You know, you want to talk about Live with Kelly and Michael, that's a different board. You got to keep the conversation here Manson-related.
In my opinion, adopting mandatory federal government background checks for purely private transactions between law-abiding citizens puts us inexorably on the path to a push for universal for a federal register.
But my colleague hasn't detected any move of that as of yet.
It is not currently proposed, but if the bill that is being considered were adopted, it would put us on that path.
What about the path we are actually on now? I believe it's at the corner of Carnage Road and Bang Bang Boulevard. You're saying we can't turn off because the exit ramp might merge into a government registry off-ramp that could, if you go far enough down, end on, I don't know, Stalin Avenue or Hitler Way, or worse, the LIE, which really is bad.
Go ahead and pause there for a minute. I mean, he's being really funny, and you know, I want to give him his kudos for, you know, making jokes about it. But on the other hand, I think someone like Jon Stewart, whose brother like runs the NASDAQ back in the day, I think he probably is unfamiliar with firearms because he enjoys the benefits of personal security and public security and these sort of things. And as an individual of celebrity, like, they don't worry about protecting themselves. They have teams of people to do that, right? Kind of like Trump almost had a team of people to do that, but they didn't. And we'll get to that story because that's coming up in the next block. But the point being, if you're gonna take on the Second Amendment, you're gonna take on this gun argument, and you want to, his words were, he wants to start the conversation on gun violence. Well, sir, if you want to start that conversation, I think you should probably start with the Boston Massacre and Bunker Hill and teach it forward of how we became a country, which was, by the way, through gun violence against the world's largest empire, who was quartering soldiers with our families, those of us who had family that lived back in those times in this country. So it's not a friendly idea having that type of empire in bed with you. So once upon a time, we had a thing, we got our own country, and with our country came human rights, like the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. But I also wanted to point out the school shootings that he's talking about. He mentioned Aurora, which was in this podcast tonight, but what you see in Aurora is not overly Second Amendment friendly type of place, because of things that have happened in the past, which related back to DARPA projects. And that was a really interesting situation with that theater shooter back in Aurora, Colorado, before they had the violent gangs from Venezuela move in and take over. So there is continuity to these types of patterns. I also would like to call out some of the gaslighting that was sponsored by The Daily Show there, because, this is a movement that is not just national, but it is international. And you can research, there's many articles and there's books and there's all sorts of things. And this agenda to disarm America has gone on since the 1960s. Bob Dacey had once done a presentation at InfoWars about the United Nations plan to take over and disarm America. Sadly, all that InfoWars, the YouTube stuff, it all got censored for political reasons, not because Alex Jones is bad, but because all those interviews and all that data could easily red pill way too many people. But as the UN will tell you, there's no single solution. And what they do to disarm other countries, they have planned for a long time to do to America, but they have not been able to do it to America heretofore because we had too strong of an American culture. But of recent, there has been a lot of eroding and degradation of that Americana culture. The sportsmanship, the hunting, the fishing, the farming, all these things that were classic American culture that weren't really going on freely in Europe because it was all on lockdown because everything was already owned. That was a part that made America a little bit different. And in the rise of the ever-going war state that starts back after World War I, the American culture has had pretty much the same path as our currency since it was taken over by the Federal Reserve. And now we find ourselves in a situation where they want to claim gun control works. Well, which blue city does the gun control work in? Are you going to show me Chicago? Because gun control works to kill a lot of people there. How about DC? Is that a place where gun control works? Did gun control work in that theater or in that school where whatever happened in whatever date in history? Because there's multiples of those events where people go into a gun-free zone where they know people can't defend themselves and they shoot people in a theater or they shoot people in a school. And that is not part of an American culture. In the 1910s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe in the 80s it starts, but really you've got movies like The Basketball Diaries with the young Leonardo DiCaprio, which has a famous school shooting scene. You've got bands like Pearl Jam who immortalize songs like Jeremy with school shooting on the mind of everyone. Did it stop? Was that before or after Columbine? Was that before or after Aurora? So when you look into who might inspire the rise in mental health issues in this country, you take away people's abilities and faculties to deal with problems, you're going to have mental health issues in this country. If you want to have people that are all hopped up on whatever is being prescribed for those mental health issues, going out there and getting guns illegally because they probably already get drugs illegally and they can get whatever else they want illegally, then you're going to have more problems going on like what we've seen. So the national database is an international database. They have it on all the various countries they're trying to disarm. They need to know who owns the guns, where they live, and how many they have. They showed this to you. John Milius showed it to you in Red Dawn back in 1984. First PG-13 movie, along with Indiana Jones and the one in India where they ate the brains. That was also Temple of Doom. That's what. Those were like the two first PG-13 movies back in the day. both very educational. The one in India shows you how the British Empire and the Raj might have been doing some cannibalism back in the day, doing some crazy stuff over there in the time of Clive. And, Red Dawn shows you how the communists would come in and take over if it happened in a week instead of taking 20 years. Post 9/11 world is an entire push for America to be fully communist. International globalism uses communism for wealth redistribution. But you could look at it going as far back as the Reese Committee, because the tax-exempt foundations in America, the Ford Foundation, Carnegie Endowment, Rockefeller Foundation, and others, were all involved in internationalist activities to change the attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs of Americans to be in line with merging with communism. And what we're going to need to lose in order to do that is First Amendment rights and Second Amendment rights, along with the rest of our Bill of Rights and human rights in general. So with all that being said, now let's cut back to some news on the side of the Second Amendment. Tim Pool's going to tell you about a federal judge has ruled that having a machine gun is not out of order anymore. Now, the caveat is, I'm not going to get a machine gun. They're less accurate. You don't need to spray more bullets that just, your barrel's bouncing. It's a cool thing, maybe for a nostalgia piece. Like if I had a chance to have like a Thompson, like something that's got some historical value to it, yeah, then maybe there's a time and place for the shooting range or the backyard and you got your Thompson machine gun and that's fun. But these are not things that I would use in a self-defense situation. However, I would notice that in times of war, machine guns are severely useful to put lead down range to keep people away from you and your family and your property. Gatling gun was an invention of the Civil War. It has evolved a lot since then. So let's go to Tim Pool. Let's learn about this new federal ruling, see if it applies to somebody like you and what you're interested in the firearms world.
We got this story from Vox.com. A Trump judge ruled there's a Second Amendment right to own machine guns. Based. Because there is indeed a right to own machine guns. The Supreme Court's Bruin decision will keep on creating chaos until it's overruled. And so long as Donald Trump wins, I'm just going to pause real quick. This is why I want to insult those pro-lifers who are like, if you're not pro-life, you don't get pro-life votes. Like, dude, shut your mouth. This is about more than you. The gains made from the Trump Supreme Court for all of us have been so tremendous. Why don't you go whinge somewhere else and go fundraise off something else? Trump is not going to give you a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, okay? But he is going to sell chocolate, right? My point is this. You're not going to get everything you want, but the dude literally gave you a Supreme Court that overturned Roe v. Wade. Why don't you sit down and shut up and accept these massive wins? If Kamala Harris wins, our gun rights are getting taken away. She's going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to overturn all of these decisions, and they're going to revert this country back to its hell state that it was in before Trump got these victories. Now, where was I? On Wednesday, a Trump judge in Kansas ruled that the Second Amendment invalidates criminal charges against a defendant charged with illegally possessing a machine gun. In the case, United States v. Morgan. Judge John Broom's decision in Morgan is obviously wrong, even under the Supreme Court's most aggressively pro-gun opinion, which Brooms relied on heavily. Vox, are you a news outlet or an opinion outlet? Ah, that's right. They're an opinion, and you're wrong. The Supreme Court says, the Constitution says, shall not be infringed. Nowhere does it say, unless the rate of fire for the weapon exceeds, wrong. The federal government has no right to ban these weapons. And the morons in the Supreme Court, including Kavanaugh, who think they do, are wrong. Restrictions actually are allowed under the Constitution because we have a tradition. That's what they argue. A tradition of certain restrictions. Shut up. No, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you want to change it, amend the Constitution. But until then, you can't just take a dump all over our country because you don't like the rules. The Supreme Court's 2022 decision in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin cast a cloud of uncertainty over nearly all U.S. gun laws. Good. Requiring the government's lawyers to prove that any gun law challenged in court is consistent with this nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Judges across the country have struggled to interpret and apply that vague standard. And many of them have openly complained that Bruin is unworkable. Good. In their published opinions. Read in isolation, Bruin's vague historical tradition test might be read to support Broom's decision. But Bruin left in place a previous legal rule, first announced in DC v. Heller. which permits the government to ban dangerous and unusual weapons. Heller also includes a line stating that it would be startling to conclude that one of the court's early Second Amendment decisions invalidates the federal ban on machine guns, which it should. To get around Heller's conclusion, let me zoom in actually, make it easier to read. To get around Heller's conclusion that the government may regulate dangerous and unusual weapons, like fully automatic firearms, dangerous and unusual, extremely common, actually, until they banned them, Brooms primarily argues that there were no laws similar to the modern-day ban on machine guns either in 18th century England or during the period around America's founding. Of course, there's a really obvious reason why no actual machine gun ban existed in the 1700s. The machine gun wasn't invented until 1884. It's the stupidest thing in the world. These people are evil. Let me tell you. In the 1300s, they had multi-barrel cannons. Can I just pull this up for you guys? I'm going to pull this up. Maybe I can find a picture. Oh, look at that. Oh, okay. Let's try this one. This one. Ooh, Leonardo da Vinci drew this one. The Ribaldiquin, known as a Ribaldkin infernal machine or organ gun, was a late medieval volley gun with many small caliber iron barrels set up on a parallel platform in use in medieval and early modern Europe during the Renaissance period. When the gun was fired, multiple barrels discharged their projectiles all at once, yielding a much higher rate of fire than single barrel. Now I understand, my friends, that's not a machine gun, okay? But the Founding Fathers didn't ban multi-barrel rapid-fire volley cannons, okay? The ability to fire multiple projectiles at once existed in this era, and they did not ban these. If the argument is the machine gun is easier to make, then your argument is the Founding Fathers couldn't have banned handheld machine fire or something. I'd still argue. Volley guns existed. And they actually did have, I think in the 16th century, pistols with multiple barrels. Like it's so stupid because the idea is patently obvious. You can Google these things, and they did the same thing way back in the day. What is this? A revolving 3-barreled matchlock pistol in Venice dated to 1548. During the late 16th century in China, Zhao Shizhen invented the Zhunlei Chong, a 5-barreled musket revolver spear. Around the same time, an earliest example of modern revolvers were made in Germany. Look at these pictures. I'm actually going to pull this up. These people are lying to you, okay? They had multi-barrel firearms way back in the day. Flintlock with 3 barrels. These things were semi-auto. But they actually had multi-barreled volley guns way back in the day. They didn't invent the machine gun until 1884. They had rapid-fire weapons back then, okay? I know they're not machine guns, but the Founding Fathers understood rapid-fire existed. That's just it. Y'all can stop lying. But let's get back to the story here. Brooms also argues that centuries-old English and early American laws merely prohibited people from carrying guns to terrify the king's subjects, or in such a manner as will naturally cause terror to the people. And so the Trump judge suggests that it's unconstitutional to charge someone with carrying an illegal weapon unless the defendant also takes the same weapon out into the public streets and displays it in an aggressive manner. Taken seriously, this reasoning would also prohibit the government from banning possession of a tank, a fighter jet, or even a nuclear warhead. My dude, those things are not illegal to own. Now, nuclear warheads are regulated. Fighter jets and tanks, I don't think. Okay, everything's got some degree of regulation, but you're allowed to own all of these things. So long as a civilian who obtains a nuclear warhead does not brandish it in public. Tell me, private entities own, control, and operate nuclear warheads at the behest of the U.S. government, right? In any event, Brooms' decision will appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals in the 10th Circuit, a left-leaning court where Democratic appointees outnumber Republicans. The historical tradition test announced in Bruin has no real substance, cannot be applied consistently by lower court judges. So what? Shut up. You guys are evil, you're liars, and you want to ban guns, and you've got to change the Constitution. You can't do this. But I tell you, my friends, culture matters more. We can sit here and talk about winning in the courts, but they make it very clear. Democrat appointees outrank Republicans. That's all that matters. The hyper-partisan shift in this country, the hyper-polarization is exaggerated, and all that matters now is that the judges live in your cult. Republicans are going to say, look, you can't ban guns. Constitution says so. Democrats are going to say, we literally don't care. We're banning them because we can. Republicans won't exercise power. Democrats will.
Go ahead, pull it.
They say this.
I think that's exactly why people have guns, because other people say, we're going to ban those. And what are you supposed to do? I don't know. I think people have guns to stand their ground, not to be aggressive, not to go brandish them in public, but they have them in case somebody comes and tries to disarm them. Because historically in the 20th century, you know, there's this thing called democide. It's a University of Hawaii study from 1996 about how governments systematically in the 20th century killed their people to the tune of 300 million. It's kind of a big deal. A lot of it, if you break down the numbers, was the Communist Project, created by the City of London bankers and the Wall Street bankers. They ran the Communist Project, still do to this day. And in a big part of that, there is the wealth redistribution of internal the country. And to do that, they have to disarm the entire population. And that's a popular thing to do before you can have communist tyranny run roughshod over your culture and redistribute to those that have, to those that want but don't want to work for it, and they just want to take from others, which in like the Christian definition world, like that's the definition of evil. People who are going to plunder your production, people who are going to take your property, not under the guise of law or anything like that. They just straight up, you know, take it. Now, government has more nuance and they have bureaucracy and eminent domain and these sort of things that can, you know, move your stuff around more readily. But what we're talking about in that clip, as far as like the upper echelon of weapons that Tim was saying private companies own, that is the invisible government. You see, the United States doesn't have like the professional welfare to like manufacture, keep, organize those higher level type of weapons, like nuclear weapons, right? Now, a libertarian might argue, you know, individuals have the right all the way up to that type of capacity. And I would say, okay, I could see that right existing in a hypothetical conversation, but you would have to produce it yourself. You can't go steal somebody else's plutonium, et cetera, to make your thing. So like if somebody could build that, that's one thing. But I don't see that as being a realistic achievement for an individual these days. And therefore, it's like a hypothetical unicorn type of situation. But the more realistic situation is small arms for individuals and families and private businesses to protect their lives, their welfare, and their property. And this has been a traditional American value of being not a cuck to people who would like to plunder your production. That we became a country because we stood up against a 1% tax on our breakfast beverage. Maybe it was 2% tax, but again, it was like not the biggest thing in the world to us today, because there's so much more egregious ways of taking our money. And, you know, earlier you heard reference to 44% capital gains tax on people selling their houses and stuff like that. You know, this new Marxist communist economic rhetoric that's floating out there, and they're trying to get people to try it on and be like, oh, that's a good thing for you. No, it's a thing that's going to destroy families and communities and the American marketplace as it used to exist prior to communism taking stronger roots. So that invisible government layer of non-elected, privately owned, anonymously owned, worldwide, international, globalist arms dealers, call them defense contractors, but they're really just arms dealers. And they own and maintain and have the codes and know how to make it and break it and fix it. And a lot of that stuff is outsourced. So it's not like the United States government really has capacity to do anything with that stuff without the cooperation of that invisible government that was set up by the deep state, starting in the United States during World War II, and continues to this day to have a very, very heavy, not a thumb on the scale, but like a full foot and a body on the scale. Some of them, I guess, probably are dead bodies because they stacked that up in their history, like cordwood in the various countries that they unfold these policies in. So we need to learn a little bit more about that, and we will as the weeks go on, because we have several weeks left to election.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.